So I've been doing this particular chart thing for a few days now, and I wanted to go ahead and take a very interesting look at the software sales paradigm and how Xbox's software sales are kind of scary when you compare them to PlayStation's own console sales. So I ran some numbers when we saw, and let me go ahead and fire up my, calculator here, and forgive the way it's going to look. It's going to look a little weird. So I got a calculator and I ran some numbers based on Gematsu's analysis of the PlayStation software sales. So PlayStation software sales this particular quarter was down. They basically went home with somewhere around $2 billion in the quarter. Now for their fiscal year, if they follow this particular paradigm, it basically translated to, probably pushing around $10 billion in terms of, content sales. But here's something that's very interesting. From third-party games, they came out with, and if all the games were bought at $60 a piece, that's how I basically charted it. They came out with about $1.4 billion, and with their first-party sales, $660 million altogether. The really interesting thing about this is that quarter, right, and their revenue, Xbox does pretty much close to that with one game, Call of Duty. It's kind of weird when you see that particular paradigm, and they do that in that quarter based on that one game. What's now, very interesting is these numbers are first party numbers compared to Xbox's first party numbers in that same quarter. So this is where PlayStation has work to do. They really do need to make sure that this $660 million, and this is a representation, guys, this $660 million, this number is beefed up significantly because a game like Call of Duty is going to come out, in a similar quarter every year, and Xbox is going to pretty much be able to go ahead and farm dollars from multiple pieces of, its own marketplaces and pretty much give it a very interesting advantage when it's all said and done. And so now when we're thinking about this, you also got to think about Xbox's content delivery, which is where they get to bring out more titles as they've basically gotten their stride back in terms of bringing out content across the board. When you also think about the possibility of these other games too going into PlayStation to go farm more 70% revenue, you start to see that the software play is where Xbox's head is at. Now, some would interpret that and say, well, this is how I know they're going to leave hardware. But one thing you have to realize is they're not going to leave hardware if they cannot replace this green over here. Do you know what this green is? This green is their subscriptions for Game Pass, which is tied to their current audience. So if you think that because they're selling all of this software all over the place, they're going to abandon hardware, you're mistaken, because even with the entire software push, right? Even if I go ahead and I, pretty much give all these new games that are going to, PlayStation 1 million units of sales, these numbers are still going to find a way to basically get maybe somewhat close to Game Pass itself, of which Game Pass is being proposed to almost double in the next few years. It's a slower growth than the 100 million subscribers that they said, but it's still very, strong in that regard because it's bringing in profits and it has people that are basically growing the service in other means because they saw PC grow. They're going to be seeing other, aspects of Game Pass pretty much grow where players can get access to these games. So until that particular, area of their business can be, replaced, which I don't think it's going to be done, so easily, where are they going to find 30 million users from? Like, think about it. And how much software can they sell to that capacity that's going to make, put them in that position? So I don't think this is something that people should say lightly, oh man, they're going to leave the hardware, but they can't. Those of you who are hardcore Xbox fans, you have to understand and realize that unless all of you decide at the moment, at the instant, you're going to drop Xbox and walk away, Xbox is here to make hardware because the hardware piece is a very huge chunk of their business. Now, the PlayStation side. When you think about all these numbers in terms of how much software Xbox can push with just basically 1 year of having, had ownership of Activision Blizzard King, then you can see where the deficit for PlayStation software, which so far from their, first party side has been down, is very wild. If anything were to go down in terms of the gaming industry, where it doesn't bode well for the third party side, I think what you're going to realize is that PlayStation is going to see an effect because their eggs are in the basket, or the eggs in their basket are based on third party game output. Now, thankfully, we're in a saturated market period where there are a lot of games everywhere. But many players are starting to notice the advantage that they can gain on alternative platforms like PC. So Steam, understanding this particular movement, is making its own strides to be able to also lock down its consumers and make itself attractive to other console players. Notice the move with console players getting themselves Steam Decks, Rogue Allies, and handheld devices as their means of getting into the market. I think this is what you're seeing in terms of a shift where, because they now understand that they can get access to PlayStation software on alternative platforms, they're also going to go ahead and take advantage of that if they possibly can, or if they have the expendable income to get into a different platform. The gaming industry is very interesting. It's very weird because like I saw in 2016, when PlayStation 4 was growing to its max, PC was also growing like crazy, which is weird because people think PC just surged recently. No, PC surged in the face of a growing PlayStation 4 and powerful PlayStation 4 hardware sales. So something right now should tell you that that same movement, you're more than likely going to experience it, especially with the young people coming up. I've said this before, a lot of the young people coming up, many of them, right? They're in that position where they're not skittish with computing devices. In fact, I work in education, and if we go ahead and we take a very close look at how these kids have engaged with their education, we'll notice that when they return to school from COVID, because of all of the restrictions and everybody was, in a sense, still skittish about them handling paper and writing materials, they all relegated them to electronic devices. So there's a huge chunk and population of the coming, generation of students that have no reservations to actually going and using a PC for their gaming. It does not bother them. So it's going to be a very interesting paradigm to see if PlayStation can actually go in and close up that gap in terms of the revenue numbers and leverage PC. Because here's the thing, the hardcore PlayStation fan is going to play on PlayStation. There's nothing wrong with that. The PC fan, or the person who's coming into gaming, who's used to PC, who understands what PC is capable of, is going to stick with PC. The conversations that these young kids are having about their gaming is very different from the conversations that we are having in terms of gaming as well. So this is where I'm looking at PlayStation's possibilities and saying, this is where room for growth is. This is where the opportunity is. They can't always depend on third party. They got to get their first party software going. And Xbox is taking that particular strategy as well and using PlayStation to execute on its own software strategy. This is where the money is. Content is what drives this gaming industry. Thanks for watching. Talk to me in the comment section. I really want to hear your thoughts about PlayStation's software strategy and where they need to keep going as they move forward. Peace out.